Hammerfell, home to the race of men known for being the mightiest warriors in all of Tamriel. With their curved swords and unique style, the inhabitants of this land are quite a fascinating bunch. Hammerfell is also distinguishable by its sheer size and variety of biomes, from lush green grasslands to vast mountain ranges to the dry and desolate Alakir Desert. Hammerfell is one of the most diverse in all of the continent. Due to the perils of the Alakir Desert, baking under a hot sun, the land has been dubbed by the Nedic as Deathland, and that is a pretty fitting title for a landmass with such an interesting history. In this video, we'll be giving you a little insight into the timeline of the great province of Hammerfell. Despite being known primarily for its redguard inhabitants, this race was not native to the land. Hammerfell, as well as its very name, was established long before then. But before we look into that, let's quickly run over the Dawn and Maratha Era. Oddly enough, unlike most of the other provinces, scarce little is known of Hammerfell before the First Era. Maybe you can chalk that up to the dangerous landscape, flora and fauna. It's fair to assume that many small, early civilizations might have chosen to avoid a desert spanning for hundreds of leagues in every direction. What we do know is that the Aelids, the Needs and the Bretons all had some form of settlements scattered across the land. As mentioned before, these settlements were most likely in the grasslands or the coasts or possibly the mountains where agriculture was remotely possible. Now, in the First Era is where things get interesting in this so far unnamed province. At this time, the Aelid elf settlements were set up along the coast in the southern portion of the province. On the shores to the north, the elves and their Breton descendants inhabited the settlements that would later be known as Sentinel and Laneland. Despite the small mark made by the Aelids, the Bretons and the Needs, the first notable settlers in this land were the Dwemer in the year 1E 420. If you've heard of the legendary hammer known across Tamriel as Volendrung, then you might have heard of the Rorken clan. After the first council was formed between the Dwemer and the Chimer, the Rorken clan left their homeland of Morrowind in search of greener pastures. Ancient folklore tells that the leader of the Rorken clan threw his mighty hammer, Volendrung, into the distant western horizon, and his people decided that wherever the hammer landed, they would establish their home. And so it was that in this new, as yet unnamed province, that the hammer fell. In Dwemer, this land was henceforth named Volendrung, the new capital of the Western Dwemer civilization. The Western Dwemer also established cities on the island of Strosmakai and Fanglair in the Dragontail Mountains. In 1E 700, in the aftermath of the Battle of Red Mountain, the Dwemer disappeared. Their glorious and prosperous cities were ravaged by the Falmer, common looters, and years of natural erosion. A dynasty gone to ruin. Over 100 years later, in 1E 808, the warrior wave arrived to transition Vollenfell into the modern Hammerfell we know today. This warrior wave was led by the Regarda people, who fled their homeland of Yakuta following its decimation earlier that century. These warrior people soon became known as the Redguards. They proved their mettle by subduing the chaos-ridden land of Hammerfell in a few quick battles. The Redguards warred with the natives of Tamriel for a long time, until the common enemy of the Orsimer rose to challenge their dominance. In response to that, the races of men banded together to destroy the abominations. Living on a new continent spurred the Redguards to separate into two socio-political factions. There were the traditionalist crowns who upheld the worship of their old gods, and the new forebears who embraced the change of culture. Throughout the Second Era, these tensions built between the factions, and with the death of High King Fassus II in the year 862, the province dove headfirst into an inevitable civil war between the crowns and the forebears. Prince Ator, heir to the throne of Hammerfell, was about to lead the crowns to victory when the forebears swore allegiance to Tiber Septim. In exchange for imperial reinforcements, Hammerfell would have to serve the Septim Empire. The Imperial Legion, along with the support of the forebears, crushed the crowns, and Tiber Septim took Hammerfell with relative ease. The traditional crowns fled to Strosmakai, and despite an epic naval battle, the help of a Dunmer assassin named Dram took down Ator and gave the victory to the Empire. There were imperial leaders in each city of the province, until rebellion rose up once again from Strosmakai, and a simple Redguard mercenary, Cyrus, became a national hero, taking down Nathalilagus and the governor Amiel Richten, reclaiming Hammerfell along with its sacred traditions. The involvement of the Empire only acted to sour the relationship between the crowns and the forebears even further. Bringing the Imperials in demolished any potential of seeing eye to eye. When the Bosma clan, led by Cameron Usurper, marched north, you'd think taking a land dominated by barren desert would be impossible for a bunch of wood elves, but the fragile state of affairs in the province made it easy, and the Cameron dynasty took care heir of the forebears and the crowns who could not work together to save their homeland. This divide between the factions continued, despite the detrimental effect it had on the control of their homeland. Much like the Cameron invasion, the forebears left the crowns to fend for themselves against the Nords in 3E 396. Only 6 years later, the war-ravaged province returned to the battlefield against the Bretons of High Rock. Both reigning kings fell, and the heir of Hammerfell, Oresma, surrendered to the heir of High Rock, Gothrid. Even after this, conflict plagued Hammerfell again, and the kingdoms of Sentinel, Daggerfall, Wayrest, Orsinium, the Blades, the Underking, and the Order of the Black Worm all came to blows. It was beginning to seem like the fighting would never cease, until the miracle of peace occurred. Following the peace, Hammerfell was ruled by the forebear king Loten, who continually organised military, diplomatic, and religious missions to prevent the rise of the crowns from the ashes of the past conflicts. A faction which shared beliefs from the crowns and the forebears, known as Latanic, was forged, but nothing would ever quell the infighting between the factions of Hammerfell. The Empire's power was waning in the Fourth Era, and not much was changing with Hammerfell's personal civil disputes. Throughout the Fourth Era, Hammerfell attempted to hold itself together against the conquest of the Aldmeri Dominion. This great enemy finally brought the forebears and the crowns back together in 4E 173. After the Great War, the White Gold Concordat was drawn up, and unlike the Imperials, the redguards rejected it, leaving the Empire altogether. The following 5 years of conflict between the sovereign state of Hammerfell and the Aldmeri leaves southern Hammerfell demolished, yet standing. The Aldmeri withdrew, and the people of Hammerfell are currently more united than ever before. Subscribe to FudgeMuppet and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Show us your support if you want to see more The History of videos. The Elder Scrolls is full of incredible history, and we love sharing as much of it as we can with you. Don't forget the links to our social media accounts can be found in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.